Now, welcome everyone to this week's OpenJ9 community call. We'll kick things off as we usually do with any questions for the OpenJ9 community. Looking at the agenda, I see there's a user question on the status of the test compiler building.
Yeah, that's the build scripts, the make files, because both on ARM and lately there has been a thread on the 32-bit PowerPC, and I can get them to compile, and like with kicking, I can get them to work. It looks like those scripts, they are neglected because you go, for example, to the ARM branch, and you try to build from OpenJ9, and it builds fine, and the whole JVM works fine. And you try to do something very, very simple, because what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to port to RISC-V the whole thing, and I'm trying to start with something very simple. And what happens is that, well, you go to, let's say, the test compiler, because that's like the basis level thing that you need. And it doesn't compile. And you go into, like, why does it not compile? And you say, oh, okay, well, the platform variable doesn't get propagated, and this doesn't get set, and this doesn't get set, and it diverges from everything else. So you fix that, and you try it running, and it crashes, and you see that, oh, okay, well, now these scripts for ARM, they're behind all other platforms, and it's only for the test compiler that they're behind. And okay, let me fix this, and you discover that some tests fail, and then like, oh, okay, why is this? Oh, this is again because of the make scripts. So recently, with the thread on the 32-bit PowerPC, I was like, okay, well, let me pull this all together and just make a branch and make it public, so it may be pulled in into the master. And I spent a day like making it into a nice thing. And after a day of cursing, I thought, okay, well, first of all, there is so much duplication in these places. Like there's the main J9 thing, OpenJ9 thing. But then in the standalone OMR, there is the build tree of all those config file, the make tool configuration files that is in the JIT builder. And then there's a whole duplication of them in the test compiler. And then there is drill, which is again duplicated all over, all those things all over again. So I thought, okay, maybe we should discuss, is that even worth the effort to go and make this duplicated code again all nice, and because it's duplicated everywhere. Maybe it makes sense to just pull them into one place, so all these tool configuration files are in one place, or just wait until the new CMake based stuff is ready, or like, what should we do? As a contributor, I want to be, I don't want to be contributing something that's not, that I'm going to spend 5 days on, and then it's going to be thrown away.
Completely understand that. A lot of that code is more in the OMR side of things, so I might defer to Mark to put you on the spot.
Yeah, okay. I joined in the middle of it, so forgive me for maybe not addressing the question completely correctly. So a lot of that code developed over time. The test compiler was an aborted attempt at trying to write JIT tests, although we ended up using it for a bunch of stuff. And then I think JIT Builder came after that, and the Trill compiler came after that. the Trill compiler is obviously the direction that we want to go in for that code. I think I heard the last end of your question, which is where's the right place to be investing your time. I think actually we should be completing this CMake work first before we waste too much time spreading out across these things. I think we'd like to deprecate the test compiler, and so I wouldn't spend very much time there if you can avoid it. The Trill work and the JIT Builder test work is kind of the two places where our testing, where those should continue to exist even after the CMake work, I guess. So did I understand the thrust of the question, or is there a part that I missed because I didn't join early enough?
Yeah, I think that the concern was I'll sort of repeat with correction to what you said about this. So the whole beginning of and the meaning of the whole exercise to me is not, you know, just to poke around, right? The whole project is about porting this to RISC-V and to some universal automatic platform derivation stuff that I'm working on, which is the ultimate goal. But the first immediate one is to port this thing to RISC-V. And I was looking for something simple, and the simplest thing I was able to find is the test compiler. So I said, okay, well, let's make that work. And I was trying to see how it works across the different platforms. So I was trying to compile and run on ARM and on PowerPC. And I'm like, okay, well, this doesn't even compile. Let's see why. And I made it compile on ARM, and then it crashed immediately. And I was like, okay, why is this always crashing in every single test? And I'm like, oh, okay, well, this is why. And it's, again, those make files.
Yeah.
And I fixed that. And, oh, now 90% of them run, but these two tests fail. And let's investigate why. Oh, this is, again, because of make files. And I'm like, okay, let me make them, you know, nice, and then put out a branch, and maybe it will be merged into master. And I'm like, okay. After a day of trying to make them nice, I realized that, oh, there is so much duplication, because there is a whole set of this, you know, p/toolset/gnu/ .mk things.
Yeah.
And it's all diverged from what's in Trill, and it's all diverged from, so we have several sets of those.
Yeah.
And the one that is in the test compiler, it looks like it's like completely neglected. It's like, yeah, this stuff hasn't been touched for a while.
Well, I don't believe the native build directory is used to build the test compiler anymore. I believe it's the CMake files that are used to build that particular project.
Oh, okay. Because with Kix, I made it to actually work and execute all the tests. And, you know, with some, you go and, oh, like even 32-bit PowerPC kind of gets to a certain point. And I was, and there's a thread like in Bugzilla, some like about this E500 core now, which gets interesting. People are asking like, okay, where is the code? And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna make it nice and put it out. And then I suddenly realized that, okay, well, there's so much duplication of these make files that maybe I asked this question on the community call that you know, whether even working on that is,
yeah,
you know, just.
So I think the best option is for you to reach out on you're on the Eclipse OMR Slack channels as well, I believe. I think I've seen your.
I am on that's the OpenJ9 channel, but Eclipse OMR, is that public?
Yes.
Well, as the OpenJ9.
There's a public Slack channel. I can get you the information for that.
Okay, Thank
And
you.
the best place to discuss this is probably in the general channel there. We can start and then
Okay.
in there.
Yeah. All right.
Thanks for raising the concern for us.
Well, it's kind of blocking me, so.
Yeah.
Just to summarize for a second, what I'm hearing is CMake is the preferred set of compile resources, and the test compiler is actually deprecated. And so Trill and JIT-Builder would be a better place to focus.
So deprecated is probably not completely true. Like there are we haven't completely replaced everything with CMake yet, or we would have removed all of the vestigial stuff. So it's not, I guess it's not quite vestigial yet. We are still in the middle of that process. But yes, the preferred direction is to go to CMake.
Wait, I thought Dan's question was whether the test compiler altogether is like not how to build test compiler, but whether the test compiler directory, like all those G tests in there, are deprecated.
Well, they still run as part of pull requests, so I wouldn't say that they're completely deprecated, but we're not trying to add, we're not specifically going in there to add more. What we would prefer to be doing is adding tests into the Trill directory and eventually removing the tests that are in the compiler test directory. So we're not encouraging people to use the API that's exposed at the compiler test component or project, I guess you'd call it.
Well, but that API is the lower level API through which JIT-Builder goes.
Yes,
so
that's true.
From the ground up to port TR to a new architecture, I have no other way than to port that API first. Basically,
well, it's a question of whether you're going to program against that API or not. So yes, it's true that JIT-Builder is based on top of it, but we're trying to deprecate the public exposure of that API, the IL injector framework that's there underneath JIT-Builder.
Yeah, but as a port implementer, I have no other way around understanding all of that stuff. So like for implementing a port.
I wouldn't say that. You don't have to use the APIs. The IL injector is a completely optional API. You don't have to use any of that. IL injector is just an API that's built on top of what's in the compiler's IL directory. It just raises the API level up a little bit. Makes it a little bit easier to do it, but we have like OpenJ9's IL generator, for example, doesn't use IL injector at all, or JIT-Builder for that matter.
Oh, but there are tests in the test compiler that do not go through IL injector. For example, the Fibonacci test.
Right, it goes through
IL injector.
Yeah.
Okay. So for me, then that looks like the best level to work at right now, like for.
Yes, I think that's true.
Okay. Okay, thanks.
Sounds like we have some general cleanup and to continue to focus on closing out that CMake work on both OMR and OpenJ9. Mark, I have you tagged against another JIT Lightning talk, possibly September 12th. Is that next week? Is that actually something that's doable for you at this point? Or we can follow up offline.
I think I'm going to have to step away from that because I have a big talk on the 18th about OpenJ9. So maybe if somebody else can step up in the next couple of weeks, I will come back and do those. But I just don't think it's going to be practical in the next little while. Sorry.
It's no worries. We'll look out if there are others who have topics that they'd like to discuss. Either reach out to me directly or we can connect on Slack or through the minutes here. All right. Are there other community-related questions that we want to bring up now? All right. I have a action item, Sue, that we were going to run some analysis on the most popular topics and options from the IBM doc. Sue, have you had a chance to run that analysis? You might be on mute, Sue.
We've got people looking over their monitors to see if she's there.
She's unable to be heard.
She does appear to be unable to be heard at the moment.
All right. So why don't we move on, and we can circle back later or possibly next week. All right. So we will step into our general business. Given that the 0.9 release is done, I will remove that from our minutes, and I will hand things over to Irina to take us through the query summaries.
Okay, so today is a better day, so we didn't have an update in the last 2 weeks. The issues are up by 4. There are 3 of them in JIT and 1 in VM and 1 in build. So there is something funny with the tagging that I need to figure out there. But for 2 weeks, just 4 issues coming up is not so bad. For the PRs, we're actually down from 98 to 95. So to summarize, we are better than we usually are, but we can improve. I still have an outstanding to do to go through everything and talk to the teams about cleanup. I'm sure this can be cleaned up nicely. So that's all I had. Any questions?
All right. The only question or comment I have is that we probably want to limit the length of these tables to probably, I'd say, no more than 5 rows.
Yeah. Do you want to keep it like the latest 5, or do you want to keep like 1 from last month? Or I agree with you. I thought about the same thing.
Yeah, I think the latest 5 would give us enough history, and then the others will be available in older minutes if we want to go back further.
Okay, perfect. Yeah, I can do that. Okay, thank you.
Okay, thanks, Irina. All right. So if I keep looking down our list, the next topic is machines. So I have an update on the machines moving to the University of New Brunswick. As far as I know, those machines should be arriving today. There's a mix of both X and P Linux machines there, and we're targeting to have them set up and configured in Jenkins by the end of September. So, good news there on having more P and X hardware available, hopefully within a month. So, are there other issues or discussion around machines and machine configuration? All right. In terms of builds and platforms, the work on Mac continues. We're still, at this point, I've merged in all of my current changes, apart from some changes to the make files as I continue to try to look at getting the dynamically linked libraries to load correctly on Mac. It's either something with the way I've set up the ARC path or related that definitely needs work. I'm continuing to try to get something up and running for the 0.11 release. And if we can't make that, I'd really like one for the end of October to coincide with the 0.12 release. So, work continues there, and I will try and keep the issue more up to date than I have so far. In terms of the ZOS build, Is there any update there?
I'm getting very repetitive here, but same as it has been for quite some time. We're still wading through the JT Reg errors. Well, actually having to do a lot of work on the JT Reg test to make them EBCDIC friendly, or add them to exclude lists if that proves to be too difficult. So that's still ongoing.
Okay. Is there any?
The good news is that once we sorted those issues out, they tend to be running pretty well. So it's overall a positive note as we're moving forward.
That's great to hear. For the ARM32 and 64 work, does anybody have any update there? Okay. Then we'll move on to the end user experience. Are there any particular issues in the end user tags that we want to take a look at or should be discussing today? Just looking at the list there, there are some issues with root certificates in the JDK, and those may more realistically be adopt issues. So the suggestion there was to open or to download the build from adopt to get the root certification authority. Sorry, was somebody going to say something?
I will. Is this about the fact that the certificates aren't there on all platforms? Is that it? Or what was it?
Yeah, there's an empty certs file.
Which platform do you know? I certainly know we have an issue at the doc talking about a missing CSS file on Windows. That was an explicit decision that was taken at some point in the past that we should probably reverse. So if that's what you're seeing, then it is definitely an adopt issue.
Okay. I don't have the platform in this particular issue, so we'll have to follow up with that separately. If you could paste me the adopt issue for the CA asserts.
Yep, I'll see if I can find it.
Thanks, Stuart. And then the other one was around font configuration. The OpenJ9 builds don't have font config property files. And the comment was that neither the RI nor OpenJ9 Java 11 have these font config property files. Is that another explicit decision at adopt, or is that an oversight of some sort in the build process?
Not one I'm aware of.
Okay. All right, so I'll take those offline and follow up with adopt separately on those, I guess.
Yep, thanks.
Are there any other user-related issues we should discuss? All right. Now that the 0.9 release is complete, there was an offer to get OpenJ9 available through the SDK man tool, and so I think we need to do some work to follow up there and get the 0.9 release available there for wider distribution. Yeah,
that looked like quite an interesting thing to set up. Actually, it would be nice to do that for all of the Adopt OpenJDK builds as well, the hotspot and OpenJ9.
So if there are volunteers who'd like to help with this, please reach out to me or comment in the issue, and we'll see how we can get this moving forward. And then the other item is the release proposal that was sent out on the mailing list. To summarize very quickly, that's that the OpenJ9 project would target 6 releases a year. 4 of them would be the quarterly releases, and they would coincide with the OpenJDK quarterly releases and include all the supported JDK levels. And then there would be 2 additional releases each year in March and September that would coincide with the new Java feature releases that are coming out in OpenJDK. So this would be the 10, 11, 12, et cetera, the 6-month release. And so that those special releases at OpenJ9 would only target a single JDK release. So our upcoming 0.10 release in September would be targeting only JDK 11, and the October release 0.11 would target all of the supported JDK levels. All right. And then I guess, unless there's any comments on that, we're at the any other business part of the meeting. So does anybody have anything they'd like to bring up? All right. On that note then, thank you everybody for attending, and we will meet again in a week.